Now let's look at a few tips for giving effective presentation. We'll be basically looking at 4 tips that you can you can follow while going for doing a presentation as part of planning. Now you can divide it into 4, as I told you. Number 1 is the strategy, number 2 is structures, number 3 is support, number 4 is speech. So you can say it as 4S of presentation. You can very well put it as that. Let's look at each, what it is. Strategy of presentation involves deciding the general as well as specific purpose of presentation. So we have been keeping on discussing on the importance of understanding the purpose of presentation. Why am I doing this presentation? What am I intending to achieve by doing this presentation? So that is what is the first part in strategy. You have to understand generalize on specific purpose of presentation. The general purpose may be to inform, to persuade, to entertain, etc. As we have already discussed, it can be to inform, persuade, or entertain. Deciding the possible results expected from the audience. This is another part. First part you have said this is the purpose. Now the second part, how would the audience respond to this? What is expected out of them? What is the desired expectation that you want from the audience? Okay, so that also becomes part of strategy presentation. Number 3 is knowing and analyzing the audience, their economic and social status, their demographic characteristics, their cultural background, and their personal preferences. Very important. You have to know the audience, you will have to analyze them, you will have to understand to what backgrounds do they belong, what is their social background, what is their cultural background, what is their educational background, and everything about them. Because the way you put your presentation, or the way you make your presentation will depend on the kind of audience to which you are addressing. Again, you will have to analyze them during the presentation, but that does inform part of your strategy. Deciding the time, location, and the manner they are to be influenced. So these are the things that comes under strategy of a presentation. Now, the second point, as I told you, is the structure of a presentation. I have been giving importance to this. I have been telling that it is not just a heap of knowledge or information about the subject that you are going to speak that will help you, but you have to organize it. You will have to put a structure to it. You will have to decide on what would be my introduction like, what would be my attention seeking like, or what would be my starting lines like, and what would I include as content, what should I be seeing to it that is spoken in this thing, what can I neglect about from my knowledge. And again, conclusion, as I told you while speaking about memorized speaking, that you can very well think about planning and memorizing a very good attractive introduction and an attractive conclusion to your presentation. That you can very well memorize that, because closing and opening, proper closing and opening of a presentation is so very important factor that determines the effectiveness of your presentation. And then you have a review, and finally the closing statement. In the review, you will try to, you might ask questions like, what is your understanding on whatever I said, or you will ask them to raise the questions, and somehow you are trying to get a response from them, or feedback from them, and measuring the effectiveness of the presentation that you have just made. And then you should have a very attractive closing statement which will leave a long-term impact on the audience mind. That will also decide on the effectiveness of the presentation that you make. For structuring the presentation, the speaker should first gather material in the light of the theme of presentation from libraries, company files, interviews with knowledgeable persons, formal and informal surveys, etc. You have hundreds of means. You can go into the internet, you can find out relevant things. So basically, you have to be ready with the content or all related information to the aspects or context in which we are going to speak. Organize the facts and insights into main points and sub-points in the body of the presentation. For this it is to be ensured that you have to organize it based on, this is the major topic, these are the subheadings that I have to cover under this topic, and so on and so forth. For this, you have to ensure that the presentation is not lengthy. You might have a lot of information, as I told you, but it should not be that lengthy. You should keep it very brief. Otherwise, you will lose connect with your audience. Main point should be stated with claims based on trials and tests conducted by national or international laboratories. The point should be presented in a logical sequence. There should be some sense about the sequence of what you're following. Decide how to capture the listener's attention and pursue him to listen. Attention can be captured by asking a question. In between, you might, you can come out and ask him a question, ask somebody there a question. But it is best not to target a specific person and ask him a question. But in general, you can put up an open question in the classroom, in the room which you are speaking. You can give an open question to the audience, ask them on what is your interest, and it should be a pretty much a simple question. Otherwise, if it is a complex thing, you might not get answers at all, and your action might boomerang. Telling a story in between, you see or you understand that people are getting bored because you are analyzing the audience while speaking is happening or while the presentation is happening. So you can very well think about telling a story to them. As in the case of an example, because such things are very likely to attract the attention of audience and keep them back on or put them back on track. Making a starting statement, even that can be done. As I told you, you can start with a quotation. You can start with what do I call it? Statistics regarding the information or something of that sort, which is very attractive. Courting some authority, even that will be good. In the context, you have an authority, somebody who is so big in the context or popular in the context, you can court him if that is relevant to your context. Plan a conclusion in advance. The conclusion makes a review of what has been said. You have to give a review to them. You have to give a short statement or a sum up of whatever you have spoken. So that's why planning a conclusion in advance is very important. Based on whatever you have planned, whatever you had spoken, you will have to, what are you going to speak? Based on what is the purpose, you have to plan a conclusion properly. I'll say so many things in my conclusion, and that will give you a review of what has been said. And decide what has to be said at the end to appeal for action. This is what I told you, the closing statements. You have to decide, you can even plan, you can even memorize a particular quote or something which will grab attention or which will maintain or stick the people into your speech. So it gives an appeal if you are going in with a well-planned, very good closing statement.